Campers, it's me, Ari Lehman, the first Jason Voorhees. From Friday the 13th, I'm here with AJ, and he's got the juiciest slice ready for you. It's dripping with blood. Jason never dies.
What makes a horror film kill memorable, terrific, even in some way profound or poignant? Let's explore. Thanks for checking this out. If anything about it trips your fancy, please like, subscribe, and share.
Yes, yes.
Without further ado, some sort of satanic rite is underway, and a terrified woman is tied up and shuddering, primed for whatever awfulness awaits her at the hands of her twisted captor. But not so fast. This adrenaline-inducing escapade is playing out on the big screen. Having seen enough to know it's not getting any better, a theater goer makes her way out before the rough stuff starts, and things get much worse. To be quickly followed by a sharp-dressed and well-coiffed, but highly questionable gentleman. Who, by obviously pursuing her, immediately oozes suspicion.
Pretty gory, huh?
Yeah.
Possible weirdo alert, am I right? With her ride thus far a no-show, from the position she has taken up to wait, the young lady gets a rather invasive once-over. With a possible weirdo having peered at her like an alien examines the human it's about to probe, or the cow it's about to mutilate. She figures she's waited enough, and decides it's not in her best interest to
Stick around.
No sooner than she rounds the corner, it seems like only a matter of time until she falls into his clutches, or so the mise-en-scene would have us believe. Without a clue he's the unsung hero, her ride appears. Watch your six, ladies. You never know who's out stalking. It was too close of a call. This also means an overwhelming desire has been momentarily dashed. Since glands have been activated, needs must be fulfilled. What happened up on the big screen has to be imitated, and happenstance and coincidence will favor the for sure weirdo.
I'll probably need you next week too. I'm available. Now you sure you don't need a ride home?
A ride? It's not like there's a psychopath about disemboweling women.
I'm sure. Thank you. Good night, Nancy. Good night.
The woman of the house sees dear Nancy off. She better start figuring out other babysitter arrangements. Nancy observes the noticeable attention she's garnered. A pretty young lady. This isn't her first rodeo, or the first time she's needed to give a guy the slip. She has no trouble employing some trickery. With the creeper driving on and making distance, she counts herself safe and shows her disdain for this kind of after-dark unwanted attention. Imbued with the free-spirited bravado that defines the young, she struts out of frame. And straight into another hairy situation. It would seem sprightly Nancy makes a habit of approaching houses or hiding in bushes when headlights appear. But this happens to be the night her luck runs out, when out of nowhere, her worst nightmare comes true. There in the woods, the killer demonstrates his preparedness and determination by quickly emulating the scene from the movie.
I don't know why you're crying. I love you.
The close replication brings to life his kink, fetish, or perversity, whichever it is, no matter how horrific and soul-strafing. A man who makes a living preparing the dead for their final goodbyes, whether alive or dead, he has no trouble parting flesh. Like some medieval victim of torture getting the works for daring to look at a rich man's loaf of bread, she's alive for every bit of the gory blood and gut-letting. Having hollowed her out like an autumn gourd, he has to pay tribute in his bizarre way, and bows before her, and laments how she can never understand his pain, anguish, and endless need.
You don't know what it's like.
Can't disagree. There is a limit to empathy. The only thing this guy deserves is the kind of pity that comes with a heaping helping of shame.
To never have a body warm and strong.
The man is more twisted up than the twist tie holding close the bag of bruised, rotten, and wormy apples, passing for his brain.
Like in the movie.
It takes scant little dialogue to reveal what a warped man kneels before the corpse of a woman he defiled as he stole her life. But from his perspective, it's all an act of devotion, caring, and, dare I say, love.
Please, my love. Please.
If only he had cared so much before he spilled her life out on the ground as he found, achieved, or forced fleeting gratification and momentary relief from his disgusting nature. Spent in the aftermath like he just ran a marathon, it's as if he too were in some way hollowed out. It would seem the price of fulfillment is high, a precipitous come-down that leaves him lethargic and wanting. A man who can compose himself and display a lot of superficial charm. Right here he's his depraved true self in all his vile glory. An oafish, brutish defiler, drenched in debauchery, degeneracy, and decadence. Showing his unhealthiness extends beyond his decaying mind, he almost loses a match of get the coat off. Only just managing to wrestle the garment free of his sweaty body, he sets about leaving, another kill in the bag. Literally? As he likely put her cadaver in a body bag, probably. Next morning, some old man is jogging along, in all probability looking out for his heart health, only to have about the least heartening mishap of his long life. Yeah, leaving entrails underfoot, probably not the wisest move. With the crime stats in the era, it took guts to run across the park, but this is ridiculous.
Jesus Christ! Oh, gosh!
And don't forget revolting. When a murder serves nothing more than the sordid indulgence of the assailant, even then, sometimes there can be a silver lining.
Mary Lawrence disappears about a week ago.
Mitigating some of the pointlessness of the horrid act.
Or the Bowen kid who disappears last night.
And in this case, the killer's shoddy cleanup leads to investigators putting together enough pieces of the puzzle.
Too much of a coincidence, right? So, what's our next move, Chief?
To do their due diligence and call in reinforcements.
I don't know what the hell we got going on here. You better call in the state police.
The poor old man is probably going to have nightmares for the rest of his days. He's luckier than Nancy, though. He got to have a long life.
Hang in there, okay? You'll be all right? You hang in there.
An exit's rise to extraordinary can come down to a stitch of suspense, used to suture together the irredeemable actions of a repulsive deviant and his unfortunate victim. Layers of misdirection give way to a victim entirely in the wrong place at the wrong time. They're just in the nick of time to fulfill a maniac's sick need to feed, some insatiable lust and perversion. An oddball Undertaker with a penchant for collecting corpses, the peculiar oddball is working through some steep issues that lead him to the dastardliest of dastardly deeds. Why? What were the reasons that drove his deranged behavior? Who knows? The film only offers the barest hints. Named Roscoe, all that's certain is that he's the director of a funeral home, processes lots of bodies, and has strange yearnings in regard to not only the bodies in his care, but the ones he takes it upon himself to collect with some free-range hunting. Once his initial target was out of reach, he was desperate to find someone else. Out trolling to fill his need, Roscoe was relying on the catch-as-catch-can method, and then utilized a little lay-in-wait stratagem to bring home the goods. Timing was everything. All but for a few minutes, killer and victim may have never crossed paths. Exploring the scenario logically, was it too much of a coincidence that Roscoe was waiting in the woods? It depends. If he noticed her maneuver, perhaps it was a calculated risk to wait in the largest thicket along her oncoming path and hope a vehicle happened along. Or it's possible he was there stalking her and would have attempted to get her even had she not been triggered to hide. Roscoe wasn't going to be satisfied without finding a girl. This is a weird film with weirder ticks. When necrophilia is only scraping the surface, you know the killer is in the higher echelon of deviance.
Well, what I'm talking about... Look, you gotta see it for yourself or you're never gonna believe me.
This film attempts to represent a lot of extreme fetishism, straying into the kind of paraphilias most often associated with the most depraved individuals. Roscoe fits the bill of the worst, snuffing out young life to feed his voracious perversity.
This is one for the books, my friend.
It seems clear he sought to emulate the scene in the film to fulfill his sick sexual and emotional needs, getting his rocks off in this extremely hideous way, the only means available to one so psychologically twisted, discomfited, and deeply damaged.
The girl was alive, and she was disemboweled.
The film presents Roscoe as a killer already deeply enmeshed in his grotesque activities. A respected figure with an irreproachable veneer, he had little or no worry of exposure. Left to his own devices, he repeatedly watched a specific horror flick.
You must really like this movie, sir. How many times have you seen it?
Taking inspiration from a particular scene depicting a bound woman. That he replicated to the best of his ability. Beyond that it's what he wanted, there was no direct explanation as to what drove him to these terrible things, but there seemed an intimation of where he might have come around to his predilections in the first place. If he tried to impress his ways on the next generation, well, maybe that arose from a similar experience that he embraced. I would hope The Undertaker, itself a low-budget exploitation lacking the gravity to pass off any heavy social commentary, isn't suggesting the gory occult movie inspired or drove him to his bizarre actions, rather than merely guiding them in a direction that seemed to at least attempt to gratify his sick desires.
A jaundiced account.
Sadly, poor Nancy was a totally random victim, targeted for no reason other than convenience. Foremost tapping into the usual horror warning that danger forever lurks, and one misstep can put you right in proximity to experience one of those pesky life-ending worst-case scenarios. This exit takes it a step further.
God help us!
How so? By showcasing how there are worse things than straight-up murder. Much worse things.
It get worse. There are traces of semen on the intestine tissue.
Sometimes that is better.
What's grosser than gross? We may finally have a definitive answer. By shining a light on the extent of Nancy's deeply disturbing defilement, the film didn't shy away from the sickening reality of serial killers and their unsettling motives. In all ways except as a warm body ancillary, a shape that fit a slot, victims are nothing more than pieces of meat to be used at will, and that's all Nancy was to Morgrat Roscoe.
Some folks have a strange idea of entertainment.
The Undertaker has an interesting production history. Shot on location in Portchester, New York in 1988, filming was mostly finished by November, but at the time, the movie wasn't released in any capacity.
What?
The last film of master performer and revered character actor Joe Maniac Spinell. The only known copy was in his possession at the time of his unexpected death, on January 13th, 1989. Of course, it was a Friday.
Happy Friday the 13th.
A hemophiliac. A cut from a fall in the shower led to him bleeding out where he fell asleep in his living room. Why he took a nap when he was actively bleeding is a mystery for the ages, but I suspect libations.
The buffoonery is endless.
Compounding a horrifying situation, because Mr. Spinell, never one to let a good head go to waste, kept his replica head, made by practical effects maestro Tom Savini, and left over from the movie Maniac. The police who did the wellness check, upon finding him dead in a massive pool of blood, with the prop head sitting nearby on top of the TV, thought they breached an even more shocking and horrendous scene than the accident-triggered bloodbath they found. As this played out, somewhere in the afterlife, Mr. Spinell was likely snickering if not outright guffawing, knowing he got one last one over, and left his friends with a hilarious anecdote. And just like that, one of the greats at portraying sympathetic monsters was gone, and his last film fell through the cracks, only to emerge in bootleg form on the black market. It wouldn't be until 2016 that Vinegar Syndrome released the restored edition we are able to watch today. Greatness, much like beauty, is in the eye of the beholder, and by most standards, this one probably isn't great. But losing it would have been a great loss to fans of horror and Joe Spinell alike.
Next time.
Another creepy, nuanced performance. What he delivers in The Undertaker epitomizes the man. A fearless performer who had no ego when it came to creating even the most detestable characters. Able to eschew all his human decency to depict the kind of disgusting perverts that are all but completely unforgivable.
Yep, that stands up to scrutiny.
The thing is, he played the creeps, fiends, and monsters with humanity, uncomfortably so, showing that for all their dark flaws and unnerving deviance, they were people too. That made it so they weren't so easily dismissed as totally alien. They weren't so far removed and outside the bounds of at least feigned normalcy that they couldn't pass as just another guy.
There's more than one way to skin a cat.
Like I pointed out, when the supreme indecency of necrophilia only scratches the surface of a baddie, you know they check most if not all of the boxes pertaining to the extreme. This might be a good time to go into the long and varied history of necrophilia in film, and the role it has played in so-called civilized society. I wonder what Angela from Sleepaway Camp would think of that. I know when to move on. Angela might be a bit hard, no pun intended, but she keeps you honest.
I don't have time for these shenanigans.
Now back to Joe Spinell's fearless and engaging knack for depicting true evil. The man was a powerhouse when it came to playing the kind of characters that were rotten to the core, yet able to walk around with the world none the wiser about their inner metaphorical moldiness.
You sick fucking bastard.
Able to pull off sexually damaged deviants with an uninhibited gusto that was shocking every time, he displayed a level of commitment to the craft of acting that shows seeking even the most uncomfortable truths superseded all else to him, and he was willing to plunge into the deepest nitty-gritty of the human psyche to mine for nuggets, even if submerging himself in such depths was likely akin to looking into the abyss. Maybe not dealing with or exhibiting anything to the extent of some of the characters he played, but Mr. Spinell might have had personal insight into various forms of sexual malady and dysfunction. He did marry a Golden Age porn star, only to quibble over whether or not she actually enjoyed herself during her performances, telling himself it was all acting. I'm not saying you need to be sexually weird to marry a porn star, but it probably helps. As for the skeevy Undertaker, Roscoe's determination revealed the wider nature of sexual desire and need. Although his yearning went way beyond the range of normal sexual appetites and accepted oddities, feet, consensual bondage, spanking, that sort of stuff, his resolve was very representative of anybody with a libido and a distracting fantasy.
There's a lot of pressure under that kind of stress, and he might become irrational.
Roscoe shows the results of that when the person is a serial killer, willing to do anything to gain gratification. Technically speaking, libido is limitless, daunted only momentarily by orgasm. So really mentally unwell people in a near constant state of arousal, only sated momentarily by the sickest, cruelest acts, are probably society's most dangerous anomalies, and Roscoe definitely fit the bill.
Well, we can certainly say you're not afraid to be reductive.
For him to overcome introspection, he hid from the shame of his perverseness by tying emotional desire into it. As though it were somehow his random and anonymous victim's fault, he could find no lasting satisfaction. Sure, sex can be very cerebral, as in some need to be mentally checked into their partner, but it can also be a bestial, savage, and primeval thing, tapping into primal territory, and that's the place from whence Roscoe sprung, the identity of his fatal attraction irrelevant. One of the scariest revelations about such a man and his ilk, how inconsequential their victim's personhood. In no uncertain terms, Nancy was somebody, with commitments, goals, desires, and dreams, the whole kit and caboodle. For her troubles, she arbitrarily became a victim of the worst kind of assault, made into a madman's fleeting plaything, and he probably didn't even know her name. And the great transgression that put her in the crosshairs? It was all because she was a reliable babysitter, too self-assured to accept a ride. Since you never know who's out prowling, trolling, and hunting for fresh meat, it's maybe a good lesson to take the ride.
Now, you sure you don't need a ride home?
I'm sure. Thank you.
Good night, Nancy.
Good night.
Well, I've about reached the end of the rope, so I won't leave you dangling. Thanks for enduring my musings. Please share any refutations, opinions, accusations, japes, or other ideas in the comments below. And please join me for whatever I'm up to next time. Bye now.
Bye, creepy man! Keep it creepy!
He's a weird guy.
Goodbye!
That's the juiciest slice. Yeah, not.